Hi everybody, welcome. Nice to see everybody. Welcome to this session, this thematic session on prevention through psychosocial support and life skills. We've got three presentations this afternoon or this morning, depending where you are. One from Plan International, one from Save the Children, and one from Make Music Matter. Please feel free to share any questions that you have for our presenters in the chat at any point, and we'll try and get to those as we go through. But we're going to kick off with a presentation from Plan International. So I'm just going to introduce Lotte, Anna and Lisa to you. So Anna Belt is the CPIE specialist for Plan International Netherlands, and she is based in France. Lotte Claessens is the CPIE specialist for at Plan International HQ. And Lisa Daspan is the Gender Equality and Inclusion Coordinator for Plan International Nigeria, based in Yobe State. So I'm going to hand over to Lotte.
Thank you so much, Katie, for introducing us. And really nice to see a full room today. So as Katie said, I will facilitate this session about life skills together with Anna and Lisa. And we are a part of a larger team that has developed a new life skills and parenting program for adolescents in humanitarian settings at Plan International. Now, this is a brand new program, so we are yet to evaluate its impact. And therefore, in this session, we would like to focus more on the development process of this program and highlight a little bit more about the evidence base for the program and its approach. So we hope that this session will offer some useful insights for those of you who are designing or implementing life skills programs in humanitarian settings. So the approach for this session is a quiz. We really invite you to join the quiz in the Menti that we have. The link is now available in the chat, because we would like to ask you some questions about life skills programming. And the answers to the questions will be provided by Anna, who has been one of the lead developers of the program, and by Lisa, who is a life skills facilitator and trainer in Nigeria. So to start, we invite you to click on the Menti link in the chat. Yeah. And there you will see that the first question we would like to ask you is, what comes to mind when you hear life skills? Because we know that we all probably have experience working with life skills programs. We may have heard of it. We may have very different experiences. So what comes to mind when you hear life skills? So I see here vocation, economic mobility. I see livelihoods, informed decision-making, confidence, protection, resilience, living weapon. That's a very specific one. Empowerment, competencies, vulnerable youth. I think resilience and empowerment are the more common entries here. Supportive. So what is interesting about these responses is that they really show that life skills are quite a broad concept. In some contexts, life skills programming may entail some vocational or economic empowerment of young people. We also often see emphasis on psychosocial well-being, protection, etc. So maybe we can ask Anna, how does Plan International conceptualize life skills? Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Okay, hello to everyone. So for us, when we developed our life skills and parenting program, we took the life skills definition of the Child Protection Minimum Standards, which is the skills and abilities for positive behavior that enables individuals to adapt to and deal effectively with the demands and challenges of everyday life. So indeed, I mean, life skills and parenting are two of the most common interventions to support adolescents in humanitarian settings. So there's a reason why we really thought it was important to develop a life skills and parenting program specifically for adolescents. So yeah, we developed one life skills curriculum for adolescents. So for younger adolescents aged 10 to 14 and for older adolescents aged 15 to 19 years. It focuses on three main areas that have been identified by the adolescents themselves as most important. So psychosocial well-being, protection, and sexual reproductive health and rights. We developed a global curriculum, indeed, but contextualization is a key step before implementation, and there is enough space to adapt the program to be relevant to the emergency and local context. So we also developed a parenting curriculum, so for the parents or caregivers of the adolescents we're targeting, focusing on same topics, so protection of adolescents, psychosocial well-being of adolescents, and sexual reproductive health and rights. The adolescence curriculum has 13 sessions. The parenting one has only 10 sessions. There's also an implementation guide to support quality implementation with resources for the facilitators, as well as M&E tools and a budgeting tool. And we work together with Clowns Without Borders to develop this program. Because we really wanted a creative play-based methodology, and it was integrated in all sessions. So we created the Love for and Play manual with over 30 creative games together with Clowns Without Borders that can be used for this program or in any other activities focusing on adolescents. And last but not least, we also developed a training package for the facilitators, focusing on the creative facilitation, as well as on the curriculum for adolescents and for parents. So that's a bit of a presentation, but maybe now we can have a look at how we designed this program to prevent violence. And I give it over to Lotte, who might have a question for you.
Thank you so much, Anna. And I hope that everyone who is on the Menti can move to this next question, which is how can life skills programs prevent violence? So can we prevent violence through offering important information? Do they prevent violence through building protective skills in adolescents? Or do they prevent violence through linking adolescents to services? Or do you think that all options here are true? And so far, everybody chooses that option, which is of course correct. So life skills programs generally are a prevention program. And in the program that we designed, we really use different strategies to prevent violence. And Anna, could you maybe tell us a little bit more on how our program prevents violence?
Sure. Maybe we can move to the next slide. So indeed, maybe it's important to say that the goal of our life skills and parenting program is to improve the psychosocial well-being, health, and safety of adolescents in crisis settings. And indeed, I mean, we're using 4 strategies. So you had already identified indeed 3 of them. So first of all, we're providing life-saving information to the adolescents as well as their parents or caregivers. For instance, when and where to report, for example, protection concerns, what is consent, what is healthy and unhealthy behavior, in intimate relationship. So a lot of information so that they can take their own informed decisions. We are also working towards skills, so strengthening the skills of the adolescents as well as their parents or caregivers in parenting. For example, we give some tips and exercises to deal with stress or to resist to negative peer pressure. And we're also linking the adolescents and their family to locally available services and support. So for example, in one session, we are developing a safety plan, a personal safety plan. We're also in almost all sessions, we are delivering information about the available services, different type of sectors. We might also invite, for example, health workers to come in for the SRHR sessions. And the last one is also that we promote positive and supportive parent-child relationship. This, for instance, for example, we give tips on how to have respectful communication for children as well as for the parents, how to handle disagreements. I mean, that are kind of natural, but it's just a question of how we can communicate on this, how you can give your points without going into a conflict. We also provide some self-care guidance for the parents so that they can take care of themselves, so that they can better take care of their children and support them. So yeah, you had this already right. So I won't take too much time, and maybe we can go to another question where we can look into the evidence. What is the evidence that we gathered? So over to you, Lotte.
Thank you, Anna. So another question for you guys. Which statement is true about life skills interventions? Option 1 is life skills are best implemented as a standalone intervention. Option 2 is life skills are more effective when involving both adolescents and caregivers. Option 3 is the longer the life skills program, the better the results. And option 4 is life skills programming is expensive. So based on your experience, what is true? And I see that here you're very much on the same page today. There are 18 people so far that say that life skills program is more effective when it involves both the adolescents and their caregivers. And there are also 2 people who say the longer the life skills program, the better the results. So this is definitely something that is very context specific and perhaps also interesting to hear people's experience. But Anna, can you tell us a little bit more about what we found in the evidence about life skills programming in humanitarian settings?
So during the development of the program, we held consultations with adolescents and caregivers in 6 countries. We also conducted a systematic literature review. There's not much documented evidence on life skills and parenting programming, but we managed to get a bit of information out of there. And we also asked experts and frontline practitioners to share their experiences, good practices and lessons learned. In a nutshell, what we learned is, so life skills program should not be a standalone intervention. I mean, we're all right with that. It should rather be linked to other humanitarian interventions and services across protection, but also with interventions in other sectors like health, education, food security, and livelihoods. The life skills and parenting program is also not per se a CPIE intervention. It can also be used in other sectoral interventions targeting adolescents. So we also found evidence that it was more effective to engage both adolescents and their parents or caregivers, because it's more when information, knowledge, and skills are shared between the parents and the children, and they can also reinforce it at home, discussing it. It also engages discussion and improves the relationship between them. So it's really key to engage both parents and their children or caregivers and the children that they care for. And also this is also in line with the socio-ecological model that we use in child protection. We also learned that it's better to have a short duration of a program in order to prevent dropping out. So ideally it should be 10 to 12 weeks program. That's the reason why we have 10 to 13 sessions. So really try to condense all the key information and the key skills into a short program. And last one, it's more cost effective than response. Indeed, I mean, we might think it's expensive because you need to train staff, you need to do a work like contextualization, having workshops. This takes time, short, small groups only that we're working with. However, over time, I mean, more and more people get trained, and then you can also scale up the program. It's also, I mean, we are building the skills and knowledge of the population itself, of the children, the parents, the community facilitators. We are adopting as well a strengths-based approach and working towards sustainability. So in the end, it's cheaper to work this way rather than maybe a response, especially. So it was, the evidence is pretty limited, but we are still implementing the program, and we hope to learn more and more about it. But this is already something that we learned. And I think we can go to, I hand it over to Lotte again for the last question.
Lotte, we don't hear you. I think you're on.
Sorry. Sorry. So the question is, creative participatory methods enable adolescents to learn more effectively. Is this true or false? And here we are indeed seeing that the majority of you guys agree with that. It doesn't come as a surprise, probably, for most of you practitioners. Indeed, what also came out quite strongly from both the evidence and our own programming experience is the importance of participatory methods when we implement life skills programs with adolescents. We see that games, creative exercises, participatory activities are really essential to actively engage adolescents in their own learning. And as Anna already mentioned, to this end, we developed a creative methodology in partnership with Clowns Without Borders. At the same time, we know that using the creative methodology really requires a specific skill set. To this end, we have designed two trainings that we offer our facilitators. Let's have a look at the next slide. We have one training that focuses on creative methodology. Sorry, could you go to the next slide, Katie? Yes, thank you. So the manual that Anna already provided contains a lot of the creative games and exercises that we designed specifically for adolescents. We tested those in several countries. And we have a dedicated facilitator training on this methodology because we find it really important that all our facilitators can really utilize the methodology and really develop their facilitation skills and to deliver this with quality. And then the second step of the training is really on the curriculum. So that really focuses on the content of the program, the different themes and the delivery of the sessions with both adolescents and parents. So now I would love to hand over to Lisa, who can tell us a little bit more about these trainings in Nigeria and the effect they had on both our facilitators as well as on the adolescents and parents. So Lisa, can you tell us a bit more?
Okay, thank you everyone for having me. I would like to share experiences from Nigeria like Lotte actually started to speak about. So we had different trainings. The Clowns Without Borders team visited Nigeria, Borno State precisely, and trained the team of staff on the creative methodology. And then we had this training in 2019 and in 2020, 2020, we moved to Cameroon, where colleagues, plant colleagues from the Nigerian team and the Cameroon team were also trained on by Clowns Without Borders on the creative methodology for use during life skills sessions. And so these trainings were meant to continue. We were meant to have more face-to-face trainings, but because of the situation with the lockdown during the COVID period, we had to make adaptations to suit that as well. So we had to have a virtual training with the Clowns Without Borders team in Nigeria, where staff from different implementing locations converged at Abuja and were able to have face-to-face trainings with each other after the sessions with the Clowns Without Borders team in the afternoon. In the morning, in the afternoon, we now had practice sessions. So it was more like a face-to-face training without the connecting virtually with the whole team around for more practice. So at the end of the training, what were we able to see? We're able to see that we had several reflections and learnings on this approach to work. So we'd see that I'll just be sharing personally for myself. I now discovered that work can be more fun using a creative approach to work, using the Clowns Without Borders approach. So I see that for me, work is more enjoyable and work is more fun rather than thinking, oh, I have to go to the field again and I have a lot to deliver on. So personally for me, it has helped me to deliver these sessions with ease and with more passion. So I would like to also share reflections from other colleagues. We had a colleague here say that she or he had several learnings on the importance of play. That is from the creative facilitation workshop. Colleagues also reflected that colleague also reflected that she or he felt happy that she or he also has the privilege of applying this approach to work. And also a colleague who also reflected said that she or he felt happy during the sessions that she or he was able to contribute to put a smile on the faces of adolescents in crisis settings. So Lotte, can we move? Yes, so I talked a lot about the training and how the trainings went, the series of trainings we had both for the life skill sessions and the creative methodology. But also overall, at the end of the training, we're able to see that, both for participants and facilitators themselves, we had the training had positive impact. And then we also had reflections for the parents of the parenting session, which who also said that they were happy that the sessions were able to provide opportunities for them to share play and laughter, and that they thought that the sessions were only for children, particularly games were only for children, but they were happy that they had something for them too. And facilitator also reflected after the training that work is now fun. So that will be all from there. And I would just like to proceed to also share for us to see, just in a summary, reflections from the adolescent themselves on the life skills sessions. So if we can have the video. Thank you.
I think the sound is not working.
And now? Can you hear the sound?
Muna yin wasanni kala-kala na nishadantuwa, na ilmantarwa, haɗi da nishadantarwa duka. We learn so many things like how to make decisions, how we play games and do energizer. Yadda ake koya mana zamantakewa da koyarwa da ake mana, sanin mutuncin mutum, sanin girmama mutum, duk inda ka je zaka zauna lafiya da kowa da ko a cikin al'umma da yawa ka tashi ka san yadda zaka zauna da mutum, ku yi mu'amala da mutum yadda ba zai ji wani haushin ka ba, kai ma ba za ka ji nashi ba, yadda zai karu da kai ma ka karu da shi. I enjoy how we play and how she used to talk to us. I really enjoy how to make decisions. Ana koyi rayuwa da yawa, yadda zan zauna a cikin muhallina ba tare da wani matsala ba, yanda zan yi rayuwa a unguwarmu ba tare da wani matsala ba, yanda zan yi rayuwa a cikin ƙawaye na ba tare da wani matsala ba, yanda ko na tafi wani guri zan yi rayuwa a can ba tare da kowa na hau ba, amma zan yi rayuwa mai kyau. Saboda suna nishadantar da mu, suna ni'imantar da mu, suna koya mana abubuwa da yawa yadda za mu samu rayuwa mai inganci ba tare da wani ya ci zarafinmu ba, ba tare da wani ya ci mutuncinmu ba ko a cikin anguwa haka.
Thanks so much. Thank you to Lotte, Lisa, and Anna for your presentation. I don't see any more questions in the chat at the moment. You've been very efficient at answering those as they came in. So if anyone else does have one, please do pop it in the chat and I'm sure somebody will answer it. But we're going to move on to our second presentation. So I'd like to welcome some colleagues from Make Music Matter. So Darcy Atman, who's the founder and CEO, and Justin Chikourou, who is the lead therapist and trainer, are joining us, and I'm going to give the floor to you. Catherine will share your slides any moment. Over to you.
Thank you. Can you guys hear us okay?
We can hear you, yes.
Great. And apologies, our video is off because we are in the DRC in Bukavu, and connectivity is challenging, so we're not taking any chances right now. And I'm here with Justin.
Hi, everyone.
And it's our pleasure to go through this presentation together. So we're here to talk about Make Music Matter's flagship program, which is World Vision, on a project called EGAL, Building Children's Resilience to Trauma. If you could switch to the next slide, please. And there's just the mission statement for Make Music Matter, which used the creative process as a therapeutic tool to empower marginalized individuals and communities to recover, reintegrate, and reclaim their future. Next slide. And just a quick background on our journey. We did begin in 2009 in Rwanda, but it really wasn't until 2015 when we partnered with Dr. Mukwege at the Panzi Hospital in Bukavu here in Congo, where healing and harmony was truly integrated. And then in partnership with World Vision, we brought healing and harmony to Kasai, and through the EGAL project to help reduce these barriers sort of to entry into retention for young girls and women who have experienced trauma, in particular,
isolated from everyone else. It's not like that.
To stay in school successfully.
It's not necessarily good.
We can go to the next slide, although I think there's some questions I'm trying to see at the same time. How do we define the creative process? Thank you. In this particular incident, the creative process is the musical process of writing and recording. And yet, in fact, our program, as we speak, is being adapted for the Ministry of Health in Peru for school-age parents, school-age children, and we work with a lot of caregivers, including the EGAL project with World Vision in Kasai.
The children. Yeah, and I can see really good questions coming up. Yes, the program is adapted to the children in a school age, as I've seen someone asking it. And this is a program appropriate really for the NGOs world, and it has been adapted in that. It has created actually in that regards, because as Darcy says from the history, we use the music as the powerful tool that in DRC especially, which is an African country where music is really, really important in different areas. So that's why when you talk about music, it's really a big process to heal the persons. And the whole process starts by the fact that the healing comes from the internal of the person. It is the person actually who went through the trauma. His heart, using his mother tongue, comes from the emotions. And that's why our program is actually started by in a holistic manner to get up the psychological, physical, and all the social networking. That it is a community-driven holistic healing model addressing MHPSS and child protection issues in fragile context. And the Healing in Harmony is intense in effective formats group therapy, and the program that creates lifelong changes. And for that, participants emerge as empowered artists. As you understand, the core is actually not to stay there as a vulnerable person who went through trauma, who was being stigmatized, or who was being actually stigmatized, but to become a person who take advantage for those adversities to become a change agent.
And sorry, to quickly try to answer some of these other questions, and they're coming in fast and furious, and that's wonderful. Yes, open to other NGOs. So we use local partnerships to deliver the model each time and local staffing. So we work closely with Dr. Mukwege and Nancy Hospital, but yet World Vision with this EGAL project is a primary partner as well. There is a partner in Turkey and Syria called Senad, and in fact, working in Canada with the local indigenous populations. Since the model is codified, it's really, we've proven it's adaptable and malleable to a variety of contexts and countries, and which answers the next question, is it just the sort of deprived areas? And in particular, a group of persons that needs that particular healing from trauma. And as Justin said, since the music is derived directly from the participants who we deem as artists, it is very, very flexible to who we work with and in what context.
Exactly. And and I like this system of questions because we really summarize all our presentation like these ones. And I think it's very good to understand that the trauma we're working on is different trauma. It can come from the rape, it can be for sexual violence, it can come from the gender violence, or even the poverty. You know, most of the area we're living in, people have been traumatized because of the hardship of lives. And it's traumatized, especially for children who has to bear to get some basic needs from their parents and who can get it, or who are facing violence throughout the families and in the environment. So that's how the model is really connected to the communities and addressing the community's issues. Good. So, yeah, and that's actually when we say that actually the artists, because they are part of the community, they're part of the problems, they understand the issues, and they really face it in their nation, in their emotions. They become now the change agents. They get powered to change those issues in the communities, and especially working on positive masculinity as well.
And we can switch to the next slide. And as that happens, I'll just finish off. The reason why we don't deem the participants just directly as beneficiaries or participants, we deem them as artists, because that is already step one in rebuilding their self-worth and self-esteem, because we try to explain from the beginning the importance of society of the artist.
Yeah, and as you can see, our model Healing in Harmony is really culturally appropriate, like social therapeutic models, and are empowered by trained therapists and music producer. It's actually a combination of the therapist and the producer who comes together to ensure that the song that will come out will come with the emotion which is appropriate to help the person to address the trauma and other psychosocial vulnerability. And as a professional producer, songs, they become disseminated in all over the world through local radio, community concerts, and major streaming platforms, such as through A4A, which is Artists for Artists Records, that has been put in place to really disseminate the songs so that people can understand and people can get understood, and for them it makes a lot of sense to become, and what it means to become an artist. You can talk to the world, and in that combinations give the power of artists to become advocates. And that's actually the sense of advocacy that comes in. And the song become a tool for education, helping to combat stereotypes, stigma, and shame. As you all know, when artists sings, it's about the society issues. When artists sings, is to bring out problems and propose solutions and talk to people who can bring change, who can make it. And that's a valuable actions. And that a valuable, participations of someone who was stigmatized, someone who has been vulnerable, who can talk to anyone, but now he has the opportunity to talk to the world. And as really we will see in our research, we get a groundbreaking publishing model created by A4A to publish helps and to ensure all royalties are sent back to the artists, regardless of socioeconomic circumstances.
And as we switch to the next slide, I'm just going to also finish off that point, which is an important one, is, sadly to state the obvious that we all know here, that these areas where we work in, say in very rural, DRC, a lot of these artists are essentially stateless, and westernized because they will not have legal identification, bank accounts, or addresses that we would recognize. So in a traditional intellectual property model for music, they can't own their own music. So Make Music Matter created A4A Records and A4A Publishing, and actually created new laws in the country of Canada in order to let these artists actually own their music and collect their royalties. So these songs are played in all the, the streaming platforms globally, and all the digital storefronts. And the little bit of royalty that is aggregated from there, we do send back to them in the local communities, actually, which is literally the first time in the world that has happened.
Exactly. And as you can see the uniqueness of this model, it's working a tremendous way because it comes from a deeper personal issues. It's personal secrets, it's personal trauma that was not able to talk to any other persons, and was kept as a secret. And that secret became a problem, actually, and that would bring psychological problems. And as a result, when artists bring this out, they regain their agency and reclaim their future, because they had feared to talk about anything, but now they're able to express themselves freely. And that, as many psychologists will tell, and we know, trauma is stored in a subconscious area of the brain, which does not really easily process language, because many people who are traumatized are not able to express freely the sense of trauma. They can even put in the words or they're endured. But emotions through music, because the person is originally feels what is coming out, we bring it in a symbolic way, in a metaphors way, such as those present in music and lyrics, can better access those traumatic centers and help process the experiences and emotions held there. And it's very, very good for person, because that creation of a tangible musical product allows the new artist to come a step closer to making meaning for what has happened to them. And the acts of performing, broadcasting, and disseminating these songs places the power to change in the hands of the participants, who actually become gradually and learn to guide their own healing and determine their own treatment pathway using the therapeutic and musical tools they learn during the sessions.
And actually, that's a great point, because, and it's something that just down talk about in the research results, is going back, and just to finish off that question, they are left with the tools to continually heal themselves. So it's not just this one-off program where they feel good for a little bit. Our research has demonstrated they can continually heal themselves, have that reduced trauma in their communities, for an extended period of time. And to answer a question that came in the chat very quickly, indirectly about what do you do about if you're in areas that are quite religious. And all I can say right now in terms of our experience is that every time Make Music Matter has scaled the program in a different context, we've always been told each time it's never going to work. So we started our flagship in Bukavu here at Panzi Hospital, but that's an urban area. And then we were told, well, if we scale to the rural area, yes, that religious aspect will come in. They might not allow it. And frankly, we never had one problem. And then moved into other African countries, same thing. And then we moved to the Middle East, with Turkey and Syria. And we were told by everybody that there's not a chance they would be able to participate in this, especially the women. And to be honest, we've not had one single problem. In fact, it comes back the other way. Usually the rate of the number of participants who want to participate is 3 times the amount that the particular room can hold. That's been our standard so far. So I know it's a sort of indirect way or ad hoc way of answering that question, but the truth is, while we've come up against those barriers each time, it's never actually been an issue. We've been told it's going to be an issue. And as trite as it may sound, that power of music and expression has overridden every other cultural issue to date.
Exactly. And as the questions comes in about the group, how the group are segregated, it is very important to know that the curriculum actually is contextual, because all the contexts don't have the same curriculum, don't have the same issues, don't have the same problems. And actually the curriculum they're talking about here is about what the issues the different groups are going through and how those groups are facing those issues. We have the group from 10 to 15, 15 to 19, exactly as the question is really segregating them. And we have until 60 and above. So the issue here is actually to bring people to talk about their sadness, about their traumas, their problems, their issues, and discussing as a community who are facing the same challenges, and see how we can change their cries, their tears to joy and smile. And the component of it starts by the evaluation, actually, the therapeutic components. If you can go back to the presentation. We start by the evaluation, and we are guided by three major psychological diseases: depression, anxiety, and stress and PTSD. But also we try to analyze the child behavior, because in some of these areas we have some misfunctional or some misbehaving from the children instead of social, instead of conflicts, instead of violations, instead of actions toward others in the environment. So we tend to evaluate that and see how the person is from the beginning, and at the end of the sessions, we evaluate at 3 to 6 months of the program. I mean, after 3 months, after 6 months, to check the impact in symptoms of depression, anxiety, and PTSD as well. And after that, we can continue and see how that has affected someone's behavior, someone's mood, and their joy of life. Because the aim of all this is to make people feel joyful and fight their sadness. And to make this work, we use a therapeutic model of the cognitive behavioral therapy and the cognitive distortion and restructuring, because actually, as you know, most of psychological behaviors are learned, and most of them come from the habits that people are used to. And in using this in the society, most of them, they tend to understand that it's normal and it makes sense to them because they get used to those negative behaviors. But when you come with cognitive behavioral therapy, you try to use the same process of unlearned behavior, and we try to affect the behavior to like the negative behavior or the behavior which is distorted, and propose some appropriate behavior which is accepted in the communities. We look at the cognitions in the mental and see which thoughts, which beliefs, which actually mindset that seems to be negative oriented and which affected the development of the person, and which suggests most of the time the positive or the realistic situations on what they are going through. And that's why we focus on the behavior, on the mindset, and the relationship in the environments to make change happens.
And as we switch to the next slide, I'm just going to answer this question as well. And by the way, in all seriousness, these are literally the best questions I've ever received in a formal conference. So thank you. They're very thoughtful and direct and specific. So in terms of where countries and we scale, it comes down to a few things. We do have a formalized checklist in our standard operating procedures and in our manuals, but more just off the cuff right now. One, it has to do with, can we find that effective local partner? Because wherever we operate, we have to find a local music producer and a local therapist, and they have to work well as a team. That, can become more challenging in remote areas per se. So we need to have great local partnerships that know, okay, this community, the artists hang out in this place. You're going to find a good musician there that you can train into a producer, for example. The other thing is evaluating whether the community wants you in there in the first place, because in order to get through any challenging periods, we find that you need that community buy-in, to state the obvious. I think the most important piece is when we're evaluating is, are we that last missing piece in a holistic care model? So for example, we do not want to set anyone up for failure. And I give you two concrete examples. There's one rural site in an area called Mulamba in Congo, where we were about to start, but we waited just a little bit because that local holistic care model, we're launching a microfinancing program. So we didn't want to heal someone psychologically, spiritually, get them sort of functional again in their lives and their community, and then set them up for failure by having no sort of job opportunities. And then with, say, World Vision in this EGAL project, that last missing piece is, will we come in and then allow the young women and girls heal well enough, get stigma reduced well enough, where they can go back to school and stay in school successfully. So that is the biggest thing, is evaluating whether we're sort of that last cog in a holistic care model locally that can make it all go really effectively. And as Josanne was just talking about, yes, there's strong therapeutic components behind the scenes for the model, which obviously is important. That's how we quantify our results. But the front end is the music piece. And that can seem throwaway, but it's not, because it's the exciting piece. It's what attracts the participants a lot of times and what retains them, so they stick to the therapy. So we have a lot of music production components, and we can go to the next slide.
Yeah, as you go to the next slide, please, I will answer these questions on how the package for the facilitators. We have actually what we call our manuals. We have our manuals, which are really 12 chapters in it, and are really being oriented and standardized to train about the Healing in Harmony music therapy program. And to get that, you have to go to the community with the stigma, and especially oriented toward the war and violence, like we have done in east of DRC, which has been known to be really a war for a long time, especially even in Kasai with the Kasampu rebellions. In Turkey, we have there with the children with disabilities, and all those actually vulnerabilities orient our selections of artists. And all this, we work with local partners, actually. We have partners in all these areas who have already had this group oriented and identified. And it just come to support on the psychosocial part, and support also those orientations in terms of after care, how they're going to sustain the gain of our therapy.
And I'd invite you to look at this slide of program outcomes. And while you do that, I'll answer the question about what challenges we have. And I would say, what's been coming up, and it's getting better, is the challenge from, well, first of all, we had a large challenge years ago from the donor side, because we created something that was brand new, and again, the front end is this sort of exciting musical piece. Donors at first thought, well, geez, we have better use for our money per se. So that was a challenge. And then even when we're partnering with these NGOs, it's getting them to understand the importance and depth of the musical component of it. So for example, our artists in these studios, while they're in therapy, they are writing and recording songs about their, about their experiences. At the end of that, it goes back to a post-production team. So if you come from the music business, it's called mixing and mastering, where you do the final polish on the songs and get them ready for release. And there's about 100, excuse me, of these people around the world volunteers that we manage. We have some fantastic people. We have Grammy winners and Oscar winners that all do this final polish frankly, for free on this music. But it does take time and resources. And that was a challenge, explaining to these NGO partners that, no, you don't understand. This is actually a very important piece to the therapy, because you need to give back a final product to the artist, to the participants, that they're proud and excited about. And that seems to sort of how to make it work, those results. And because they can then take the final result and they have their trauma, and all of a sudden that trauma is sort of in a CD in their hands. And sort of bridging that gap and explaining to our partner NGOs, even when there was funding, that that musical component is actually inherently baked into the therapy, was, I'd say, one of the bigger challenges we had. And we can go to the next slide.
Yeah. The research, and this research actually is the key to show how this program has really impacted many people in our area, especially with depression, anxiety, and PTSD. As you're looking at this, you see the percentage of people who actually reduces the symptoms in depression, anxiety, and PTSD. And this has been published with the story. We have the current, which has been the current article that has been published with the University of Michigan, with Cambridge, with the University of Michigan and ICAT from here in Bukavu in DRC. So it is really shown that this program has scientific base, because the research has proven that what you're doing is really working in reducing symptoms of depression and anxiety. You can go to the next stage, and I think next slide. And yes,
and then you can quickly look at that, Lurgans, and let's get there. And we've already spoken about this, is that we have codified the model very well in different languages, content across the board that way. And back to the research very quickly, not only have those large reductions in PTSD, anxiety, and depression occurred, they have stuck up to 6 months of them leaving the program despite living in an active conflict zone. And now we can skip to the next slide.
Yeah, and which is very important, knowing that actually the violence and the trauma is still there in the environment, but they can now face it with more confidence. And to go to that, to just talk about the project we're intervening now in Kasai, still in the DRC, but which is more oriented now in education for young people and young girls, and trying to bring here the healing in harmony to help these people, and this category of people who have been marginalized and were not getting opportunity to stay in school because of different issues, such as early marriages, such as violence, such as rape or early pregnancies, and because they are that, they can't stay in school. Now with this program, you're trying to bring back the children, these young generations, to understand the powerful of education and how they can get the good environment to study, because music will affect their sense of concentration, their sense of learning processes, and that can help them once they feel good, they feel comfortable and stable, they can focus on the subject in schools, which is very, very important. And we are targeting 2 regions in Kasai, Kananga, and Chimbulu, and our ultimate goal is to improve the learning outcomes among vulnerable children and youth, particularly girls in conflict-affected communities in Kasai in the DRC. And so far, we have gotten we're targeting 2,520 girls, 484 boys, and 100 female caregivers.
We can skip to the next, which is more explaining about more detail in the GAL program. Oh, we can skip. And just to mention, very important, on the EGAL piece and talking about how we insert into a holistic care model, at the end of our first cycle, to answer the question, which is 4 months long, that these young women and girls were healed so well, they actually went to World Vision and said, okay, where's our scholarship to go to school? We are ready, we want to go back to school.
Yeah, and the same thing, as you know, UNICEF actually has shown that actually there is many people in humanitarian care, and 3.8 million people in the Kasai province need humanitarian assistance, including 2.3 million children that UNICEF has brought out. So girls, adolescents, and vulnerable children and young women faces multiple gender-based barriers, restricting their faces access to quality education. And that comes to respond to the question, would you ever consider to implement this approach at a wide community level, aiming to improve well-being more generally rather than the more focused interventions, which is really good thing to look at and see in the future and how to make this. And still looking at these focused interventions, we're trying to say that in the different communities, and you know, the challenges of all these fundings, we maybe really want to go to all these areas, but at this part, we think that in these focused interventions, they have part of in spreading word of mouth by each to each other in the community through songs, through public consent, through community-focused discussions, they can really get to understand it can impact the whole community.
And go to the next slide.
Yeah, again, the primary goal of the project, as we just said, is really to improve the psychosocial barriers. So to education through music therapy, and to empower participants to take control of their healing by engaging first and foremost as artists and community leaders, rather than victims of trauma or people who they don't have any value. There's nothing they can do. And that's why we'll see in the song we will have to play. My body is not my body is not a weapon. You'll see here how women, girls who have future, who can want to be doctors, who want to be lawyers, because of this lack of opportunities, most of them have lost that. They're just looking at people who don't have any value, who can do anything for their future in their countries.
You can go to the next slide.
Yeah, I think we have done this in summary, because you can just go to the next slide. Yeah, because of timing, actually.
And I think you can also, yes, thank you. And yeah, you know what, we through the questions, I've actually gone through most of this, so we can, I think we could go to the next as well.
Yeah, because we have already responded on the challenges we are facing in all these areas. Yeah, and so in gender breakdown in Kananga and Kasai, I think you can just go to the song. Maybe you can just focusing on the songs there, because all this is studio and how it is organized in the area in Kasai.
And I would say one of the other challenges in this area in Kasai at the Agala project that's come up is simply, it is a dangerous area. So transportation for the participants safely has been the program's been so popular and successful that we've had people than anticipated, therefore.
Yeah.
In one way, it's a good problem to have because it shows the popularity of the program, but that has been a challenge. Now we have, I think, 1 or 2 minutes to play part of this song. This is one of the flagship songs. We have over 30 albums out globally. A4A Records is on Warner Brothers globally. So we try to treat all of our artists as A-level artists. One of the popular songs is this one written by Sandra, an participant of the program in Congo, and it's called My Body's Not a Weapon.
Yeah, and it's very related to our Peace Prize partner, Dr. Mukwege, in 2018, who all got the Peace Prize because of women being used as a weapon of war. So this is really powerful and coming from DRC in his own hospital. So please listen to this as we are getting other more questions.
Play as much as you can until our time is up. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Darcy and Justin. That was amazing. We're going to share the link to the song in the chat so you can listen to the whole thing a bit later. In the meantime, really happy to introduce our third presenters from Save the Children. Kevin, Ina, I agree, very impressive. Kevin and Maiko. So Kevin is the head of child protection and child rights governance at Save the Children's Uganda country office. And Maiko Fuji used to be based in Uganda. I was in charge of one of the home-based psychosocial support projects that we're about to hear about, and is currently based in Japan. So Kevin and Maiko, over to you.
Thank you, Katie. I think Kevin is online. Kevin, can you? All right.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Okay. The slides, please. This afternoon, we are discussing an approach that we have taken on for our home-based support activities for children to prevent harm amidst the COVID-19 pandemic in Uganda. My name is Kevin, as mentioned, and I'm with my colleague, Maiko. So to provide a brief background, Uganda hosts almost 1.4 million refugees who have fled insecurity and uncertainty, majorly from South Sudan and the Democratic Republic of Congo. And 60% of the population is made up of children. So that means that there is bigger need for children, and of course the effects of the war are affecting children to a large extent. So at the outbreak of COVID-19, government set up guidance and rules that included closure of schools and child-friendly spaces as a way of preventing further spread of COVID-19. And Save the Children had to find an approach to support children. In Uganda, refugees are settled in settlements and not exactly camps. So they live in normal communities like any other Ugandan. And that means that they are spread out in different communities, and interventions are spread out like a normal community. So as part of our business continuity plan, Save the Children adapted our ongoing PSS activities for children that were initially conducted in child-friendly spaces at the community level. So we had to deliver a mobile kind of approach to deliver the PSS activities to children in different locations. And to start with, we had training sessions for our previously stationed CFS facilitators on approaches, how to deliver condensed packages, how to deliver PSS activities and avoid spread of COVID-19, and then provide more facts on how they would include case management in the everyday PSS activities for children. So these people had to move out to communities, meeting children of all age groups, using majorly the two approaches that we employ in our child-friendly spaces, one of which is HEART and the other is Thematic. So for the HEART approach, which is also called Healing and Education Through the Arts, children are engaged in fun activities that provide PSS, but also that are for learning. So small groups of children are handled within their households and engaged in small, short activities that keep them engaged, but they're having fun and also learning at the same time. This is an approach that Save the Children US has rolled out in different countries, Uganda being one of them. The second approach is the Team Up, that majorly comprises of body movement activities. So child-friendly facilitators, like you can see in those pictures, move out to homesteads. Those are two different households, meet children in their homesteads, engage them in activities, and then move out to another household. And at the end of the day, a facilitator could have engaged up to 10 households, and children are happy and are able to get some sense of routine and continuity of their daily lives. And in a way, this has helped many children remain sane, but also reduce the other risks that they would have faced. Next slide, please. My colleague Maiko will take us through some of the outcomes of the approaches that we've had for home-based PSS activities.
Thank you, Kevin. So in this slide and the next one, I am going to explain some outcomes and impacts of children that have been achieved by this approach. And this slide shows quantitative outcomes with some specific figures, as you can see in the slide. So over the past year, Save the Children Uganda country office has reached more than 15,000 children through this home-based psychosocial support approach, especially in refugee settlement areas in Uganda. We have also done some surveys to see outcomes of this approach and see actual changes that happened in children's well-being in a qualitative and a quantitative manner. And this is because we think that the data collection and analysis is also very important to see the effectiveness of this PSS intervention. So we have collected the data from 181 children, and as a result, it found out that 81% of children who had participated in that survey showed increased well-being. So when we say well-being, we have measured mainly 3 aspects under this project, which included emotional well-being, such as feelings of happiness and optimism, and the social well-being, such as relationship with peers, family members, and the community members, and the ability to cope, resilience aspects, asking children about their ability to cope with challenging and any stressful situations. Go to the next slide, please. And then this slide shares a case story taken from an 8-year-old girl to show you some qualitative outcomes through this approach. And the girl, one of our beneficiaries, said, I used to leave school, go home for lunch, and then to the child-friendly space to play with other children, which made us feel happy. Shortly after, we were told that there was an outbreak of the COVID-19. I would always check at the CFS only to find it closed. And I was so happy when I saw the CFS facilitators coming to my home. They gave me a skipping rope and the Ludo, which is a board game. It was a relief as they kept coming to play with me at my home. So this is the actual voice, the story shared by one of our beneficiaries. So now handing over back to Kevin.
Next slide, please. So with this approach that we have implemented since about July 2020, we've come to draw some lessons. And one of the lessons is the fact that we are able to replicate this method in situations of emergency. So what has happened in the different response locations, usually children are not engaged until such a time when we have child-friendly spaces. But the home-based approach has shown us that this can be an alternative where funds are not sufficient, or where we have an emergency happening and we're just responding quickly. This is an approach we can use, engage children anywhere from any place without necessarily waiting for CFS infrastructure. And then the other lesson we've learned is that this approach really supports case management as CFS facilitators, as community structures that are supporting home-based activities for children, go to the communities, they're able to identify children's issues and quickly refer them to caseworkers. So this approach actually supports case management work a great deal. I must say that this has not come easy. We've had some shortcomings and challenges. For example, the contact time for children is limited because a child who would usually go to the child-friendly space all days of the week and get engaged as much as they want can now get probably 2 to 3 hours of contact time in a day, sometimes just twice a week, up to a maximum of 3 times a week. And also the other thing is that the cost of wear and tear of materials, having to procure materials for each and every household to prevent the spread of COVID-19 is also a bit costly, unlike the child-friendly space where materials were shared. So we've had lessons learned. It's had advantages, but we've also had some shortcomings. But we have learned to adapt over time because this is what is working at the moment. and it's been such a long time. Next slide, please. Over to you, Michael.
Yes, now we would like to hear about your thoughts on this approach using Jamboard platform. So to the audience, the question 1 is, have you ever heard about this approach before, home-based psychosocial support, PSS? And what kind of experiences do you have of it? Please write your answer or any questions using Jamboard. So I think the screen to be switched to Jamboard now, or? So the question is, have you ever heard of this approach before? You can just say yes and no, not sure. And if you can share any experiences you have, we would love to hear it. Yes, thank you.
Maybe Catherine, could you quickly just show on your screen how to add a sticky note in case anybody hasn't used Jamboard before?
Yes, I'm happy to. So hi, everyone. Basically, the way to grab a sticky note is to click over here. You click on it, and you can choose your color from a range of options. So I'm going to opt for blue. I haven't heard about the experience. I'll write no, would love to learn more. And I'll add that there, and then someone's just added one, so I can move it out the way, then I find mine, and I can put it there. I can also resize it. So it's all about just dragging and clicking. I hope that makes sense to everyone. So you really just go there, click, type on it, and then rearrange it onto the board.
If maybe Kathleen, you can pick up some of them and then read them out. And as Kevin is not seeing the screen and some text are very small to me.
Sure.
Would you mind? Yes.
No problem at all. So we're getting, I would say overwhelmingly, we're seeing yeses. So let me read through some of them. Yes, in small clusters in people's homes and using home-based PSS kits. Others are saying we use this in different contexts and it's been on the increase during COVID. And someone has heard of it but never used it. And others have heard of it but only used it in small settings. Then there's quite a few no's as well. So no, would love to learn more. I think that was my comment, but I would love to learn more. I'm seeing not much, no, mostly we hear about it from government or NGOs, but not home-based. So I think that specifically the home-based is where people would like to learn more. Let's see what else. There's very documentation on the approaches, so I think more information is wanted on that. Others saying that it's quite effective, so they've obviously used it and much appreciated by families. And at Plan, they've used home-based PSS in Lebanon and Jordan during the COVID-19 lockdown. Materials were given to families and activities were facilitated by mobile phone. It'd be interesting maybe to hear a bit more about whether that was a positive or negative experience later on if there's time in the chat. So yeah, I would say that that's a sense of some of the comments that are up here on the Jamboard.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to see all these comments and the feedbacks. We would go into details once the session is finished. But yes, maybe can you go to the last question?
Sure.
And then we'll address some question at the end in the chat box. I mean.
So here you would do the same thing with your sticky notes. And I know that some of you did already answer whether you would like to apply this approach, but here's an opportunity to get more specific and also to say what ideas you're taking from this session from Kevin and Maiko. So again, you just drag that sticky note and add something in.
Maybe while people are thinking about that, Maiko, you and Kevin could answer it. There's a few questions in the chat. I don't know if you can still see them. Let me know to read them out.
Please read them out, Catherine.
Okay, so one is, did you use the same content of CFS activities during the home-based PSS?
I beg your pardon?
Did you use the same content of CFS activities during the home-based PSS?
Yes, we did use the same content of PSS activities, but we do make variations based on the context and the amount of time available or on the circumstances of the children. For this approach, HEART and Team Up, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we had condensed manuals with shorter activities. So it's similar activities, but they've been condensed to fit the home-based kind of environment and the amount of time. So yes, they are the same activities, but this time they adapted to the situation of children, the amount of time available, the age group, and the numbers of children within a particular homestead.
Great, thanks, Kevin. And then the next question is, was there any concern raised by the parents or caregivers to have an adult coming to their home to meet with their child? Were the parents present or at home at the time?
Activities are conducted when parents are present most of the time. What happened as we start, we had community sensitizations on community radios where we told parents what approach we were going to take. But most importantly is that we are working with facilitators that come from those communities. So a child-friendly space is located in a particular settlement and it serves that particular catchment area. So we work with facilitators who live within that community, of course, for fear of spreading COVID-19, but also for children to deal with a facilitator that they are familiar with and for parents to be comfortable with them. So yes, there could have been concerns, but we did address them from the start as families deal with facilitators they already know. And we try as much as possible to have monitoring visits by many of our teams. And also we meet up with facilitators every end of week to plan and hear any issues that might be arising as they conduct activities.
Great, thank you. I think that's answered a question that just popped up. But another question is, did you include parents more in the delivery of activities, for example, to help strengthen caregiving practices?
Yes, we are including parents more, especially when it comes to the HEART that has some learning components. We are working more with parents, and of course, we have some parents that are really interested, and in certain circumstances, we have parents that are looking at it as play, or they have other economic activities they want to engage in. But yes, home-based PSS activities involve parents more, and on the positive note, it has helped parents understand exactly what happens at the child-friendly space, even for those who are not usually coming to the child-friendly space. So they now understand what exactly happens at the child-friendly space. So they are more involved and loving it more. But of course, the children would love to go back to the child-friendly space because there are activities they are missing out on that used to happen within the static infrastructure.
Thanks, Kevin. And then there's a question from a bit earlier, which was, which tools did you use to measure the qualitative impact?
So we have tools on both approaches, both HEART and Team Up. We have tools that measure progress of children's well-being, that measure feelings, and we have meal teams, monitoring and evaluation teams who on a regular basis try to measure how far the children are on matters of well-being, but also the facilitators have tools that they use to check where children are at the end of sessions after particular periods of time. And these are designed within the approaches.
Brilliant, thank you. And then a question from Francisca. If you identify a caregiver was in crisis and can't support their children, did you refer them, or do you refer them to another program?
Yes, within the response locations where we work, first of all, for children, we refer them to caseworkers. These caseworkers could be caseworkers from within Save the Children or World Vision or any other agency, depending on the location. And then for adults, we do the same. We refer to the same. We refer through the same referral pathways. So some of the tools that a CFS facilitator is moving with as they go to the community, or the person that is conducting this activity, they handle materials that might be necessary. They handle the referral pathway. So at the end of the day, they do refer cases depending on what they find on ground. So yes, we would refer both caregivers and children based on what issues they are. And like we noted before, this approach has been very, very important for our case management work. So issues are handled immediately. For example, children with specific needs that were initially not coming to the CFS or have been hidden within households, this is the moment when they get to be identified by a facilitator who is visiting their home on a regular basis and who is from within that community.
Great, thanks so much, Kevin. And somebody's asked if it's possible to share the materials. Maiko tells me that it is, so we'll share a link to those. Maiko, I don't know if you want to reflect on the second Jamboard now. It's got a bit more to see.
Yes. So it seems the text is still very small to me, but I can see some people say yes. Great to think about the additional costs. Okay, yes, we'll recommend this approach to social service providers. Yes, definitely. Thanks for this feedback. It's interesting that I used the same approach, Hart and came up, and it sounds like there wasn't a need to adapt it. I think this approach could be used in different contexts and by different service providers, including government. Yes, definitely. It will be interesting to conduct a trail as such. Okay, there's a question, Kevin. Given that global CFS research, given that global CFS research has shown that impacts of PSS activities largely depends on the quality of the facilitators. Yeah, exactly. Do you see a risk when activities are implemented at home? It's very interesting. Kevin, can you?
Yes, there is a risk if activities are implemented at home by the parents, if they have no idea what they are doing and just doing their everyday play. That the difference with this circumstance is we are working with our already trained facilitators. We had to do more training and we continue to do more training for them because now they are going home. Yes, there would be a risk if we don't work with facilitators, but in this circumstance, we are working with facilitators, and take note that with this approach, we have almost doubled the number of facilitators. Initially in the child-friendly spaces would have less numbers because children don't come in at the same time. But in the community, there are more children. Those who would have been at school in higher classes are all at home. So we have doubled the numbers of facilitators. So yes, I agree there would be a risk, and that is something we've thought about, and we are working with the already trained facilitators and training more, and we do regular training. And of course, there could be other risks, other child protection risks, if these people are not well trained and oriented on child protection, on child safeguarding, and other forms of dealing with children.
Do we have?
Brilliant.
Thanks
so much, Kevin. I'm just gonna ask one more general question to all of our presenters, which is, what do we need to, well, who do we need to advocate to for more prevention programming, more resources for prevention programming. What should we be doing to try and ensure that we can do more of this work? I don't know who wants to go first.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, we can hear you.
Okay, and I'll just jump in
Great,
quickly. I think I heard the question. I think my answer is somewhat, related, and I think, and I hope it is, and if it's not, forgive me. There is an education piece on the donor community where I feel there's a large gap, in the sense that we still too much value for dollar is important, but I feel it's getting to the point of, here's a penny, go heal and save 1,000 lives forever. Can you do it? And you couldn't do it in a context in the Western world where the system's well in place, never mind in a developing context or humanitarian context. I think that education piece to bridge that gap is very important, because every time we do a grant budget and even talk to large bilateral donors, those things come up all the time. It's that value for dollar, which is important, but it seems like it's only cared for the importance of on paper, not in reality of creating a sustainable change in the community.
Definitely. Thanks very much, Darcy. Plan or save, does anybody want to add anything? Any other thoughts? I put you on the spot with an unplanned question.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Catherine, can you please repeat that question for me?
Yes, it was who do we need to advocate with to mobilize more resources for prevention programs like these?
I would say we need to be working closely with other stakeholders, but I also want to say we need to be working closely with governments. I think if governments understand the needs of children and they understand what needs to be done, we would be working closely with them to advocate elsewhere for funding to support, prevent, and deal with needs of children. Yes, we know they have gaps here and there. If governments do understand and do their role, then it would be very easy for us to advocate together with them for the needs of children.
Brilliant.
And of course, we also need to be coordinating amongst ourselves and working together on these initiatives and learning together and building capacity of one another. I think that would take us to great heights.
Brilliant, thank you. And I think that's a great note to end on. So I'd just like to thank all of our presenters. Thank you to Plan, thank you to Save, thank you to Make Music Matter. Catherine has shared some of the useful links again in the chat for you in case you missed any earlier. And just to let you know, so there's now a 30-minute break in the agenda. The next set of thematic sessions will start at 3:30 Central European time, so half an hour from now. So you can either take a break or you can go to the coffee lounge in Philo and find somebody to have a chat with. That's up to you. But thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the annual meeting.